Before the world realized what was happening, a broken nation forged a kind of power no one had ever seen. Not just armies, not just weapons. A power built on fear, obsession, and the ability to control the human mind itself. This is how powerful the Nazis truly became, and how close they came to reshaping the world forever. Germany didn't wake up one morning and decide to follow the Nazis. It happened slowly, quietly, underneath the pressure of humiliation and despair. After World War I, Germany was less a country and more a wound. A defeated empire forced to swallow a treaty that crushed its pride, its economy, and its hope. People watched their savings evaporate, their jobs vanish, their children go hungry. A society drowning in pain becomes desperate for something, anything, that looks like a lifeline. That's the condition Adolf Hitler walked into. He didn't rise because he was strong. He rose because Germany was weak. Hitler's power didn't begin with tanks. It began with stories. Stories about betrayal, stolen glory, and enemies inside the nation who had ruined everything. And when emotion is weaponized, it can move nations. He used anger as fuel. He used fear as a compass. And he used desperation as a ladder. The early Nazi Party was small, chaotic, and easily dismissed. But it had something the other political parties did not: a narrative, a promise, a direction. Most parties offered programs. Hitler offered identity. Rallies grew louder. Symbols spread. Uniforms multiplied. The movement began to look like a force even before it became one. In January 1933, Hitler became chancellor, not by revolution, but by underestimation. His opponents thought they could control him. They soon learned they were wrong. The Reichstag fire changed everything. As flames lit up the sky, Hitler saw an opportunity. He claimed Germany was under attack and demanded extraordinary powers. Fear did the rest. The Enabling Act passed, giving him full control of the government. Democracy died quietly, replaced by something far more dangerous: certainty. Now Hitler controlled the state, but not yet the soul of the nation. For that, he turned to propaganda. Joseph Goebbels didn't create advertisements. He built emotional weapons. He crafted a version of reality that made people believe obedience was patriotism. Radios filled living rooms with Hitler's voice. Posters painted him as Germany's savior. Films glorified war, purity, unity, destiny. Even children were taught to see the world through Nazi eyes. When you control what people see, hear, and repeat, you control the nation. But persuasion alone wasn't enough. Fear had to sit beside it. And that's where the SS and the Gestapo stepped in. These weren't normal police forces. They operated in shadows, fueled by suspicion. A whisper could end your life. A rumor could make you disappear. People learned to keep their heads down and their mouths closed. Silence became the safest language in Nazi Germany. In 1934, Hitler eliminated his own rivals during the Night of the Long Knives. It was a message carved in blood. Loyalty wasn't requested. It was required. With political and psychological power secured, Hitler turned to military power. The Treaty of Versailles forbade German rearmament, but he ignored it like it didn't exist. Factories secretly built weapons. Pilots trained under civilian covers. Scientists developed new technologies behind tightly closed doors. Then, in full public view, Hitler announced the Luftwaffe, restored conscription, and expanded the army. Europe protested, but took no action. Every time the world waited, Hitler grew stronger. By the mid-1930s, Germany had transformed into a highly militarized state, with an economy built for war. The Nazis turned industry into a battlefield of steel and production. The country itself became a military machine. Hitler tested the world's patience with the Rhineland in 1936. His generals feared disaster. But when French soldiers didn't intervene, Hitler learned something crucial. The world feared war more than they feared him. This was perhaps his greatest strategic advantage. He realized hesitation was power, silence was strength, and he used both ruthlessly. 2 years later, Austria fell without a fight. Crowds cheered as German soldiers rolled in. The Anschluss was complete in a single day. Then Hitler targeted Czechoslovakia. He demanded the Sudetenland, claiming Germans there were suffering. Britain and France gave in, hoping to buy peace. Instead, they bought time Hitler used to prepare for his next move. By 1939, Germany had one of the strongest armies in Europe, a unified population, and a propaganda machine that made obedience feel like destiny. And then came Poland. Blitzkrieg, a combination of speed, terror, and overwhelming force, shocked the world. Tanks sliced through defenses. Aircraft shattered communication. Infantry swarmed in coordination. Poland fell in weeks. Europe's worst nightmare had become real. Germany didn't stop. One by one, neighboring countries collapsed like paper walls. Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and then France fell in just 6 weeks. By 1940, Hitler controlled more European territory than any modern army before him. His empire stretched across the continent, reshaping maps and rewriting borders. This was territorial power on a scale Europe had not seen since Napoleon. But behind these conquests lay something darker than military success. The Nazis built a system of oppression that reached into the bones of society. Occupation forces seized resources, crushed resistance, and replaced local laws with Nazi rule. Millions lived under constant fear. Curfews, raids, and executions became part of daily life. But the darkest Nazi power was still unfolding. The Holocaust wasn't a sudden eruption of violence. It was constructed layer by layer through laws, propaganda, and logistics. Camps were built not for imprisonment, but for annihilation. Gas chambers disguised as showers, crematoriums burning around the clock, trains arriving on schedules like factory deliveries. The Nazis turned genocide into an industrial operation. This was not chaos, it was policy. The power to decide who lived and who died on such a massive scale was perhaps the most terrifying power the Nazis ever held. At the same time, Germany's military developed technologies far ahead of their time. Jet aircraft, guided missiles, advanced submarines, encrypted communication systems. If these innovations had come earlier, the war might have taken a different turn. But Nazi power had limits written into the structure of their empire. Their economy looked strong, but was fundamentally unstable. It relied on conquest to survive. Without expansion, resources collapsed. Hitler's decision to invade the Soviet Union in 1941 pushed Germany beyond its breaking point. The distances were endless, the winters brutal, the resistance fierce. For the first time, Nazi momentum met an immovable wall. Then came the United States. Once America entered the war, German industrial power stood no chance. Allied factories produced weapons faster than Germany could destroy them. By 1943, Nazi power began to fracture. The Eastern Front collapsed slowly, painfully. The Allies advanced through Africa and Italy. Bombs rained on German cities. The empire that once looked unstoppable now bled from every direction. Inside Germany, fear returned, cities burned, supplies ran out, confidence crumbled. Hitler's decisions turned irrational and desperate. By 1945, Soviet soldiers entered Berlin. The city was a wasteland of ruins, smoke, and shattered dreams. Hitler hid underground in his bunker, his power fading above him like dying embers. On April 30th, he took his own life. Days later, Germany surrendered. The Nazi regime collapsed like a rotten structure, finally crushed by its own weight. So, how powerful were the Nazis really? Powerful enough to hypnotize a nation, powerful enough to conquer most of Europe, powerful enough to build a machine of terror that reached into every home, every city, every life it touched, powerful enough to organize genocide on an industrial scale, powerful enough to force the world into its deadliest war, powerful enough to nearly reshape the modern world. But ultimately, their power had a fatal flaw. It depended on constant expansion, constant fear, constant control. Once any of these cracked, the whole empire shattered. Nazi power rose fast, burned violently, and died catastrophically. Their legacy remains not in the strength they showed, but in the destruction they left behind. And history remembers them as the ultimate warning. The greatest danger isn't a powerful regime. It's a broken world willing to believe in one.